Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hi, Mr. How do I pronounce your name? You have to tell me properly. I don't want to destroy your name. You know, you gotta tell me how to pronounce it right.
Uh, just uh, just call me KO. It's fine. Masombuka is the surname.
Masombuka. You know,
Yes.
like this is something that even like here like where I'm from, like I have this
Mhm,
problem like with like other races where they cannot pronounce my name. So they like
mhm,
when I tell what they ask me what's your name, and I say Mubarak, and they say Mambu. You know, they will go like I have like I've went to situations where they will go like a like Muraba. They will call me Muraba, and they will call me like so many different names. So and so I know the anguish of being called something not what you're not. So I have to make sure I call you correctly. Thank you so much for doing this for me. I mean, it's like for me, it was one of the like I was sharing with you. The reason why I finally decided to do this was the main reason was I actually was contemplating of doing this for quite some time, like maybe over a year or two. You know, I got this equipment and stuff like that, like a year ago. You know, and but what was really bothering me was the why am I doing this? You know, like what is the intention behind this whole scenario? And the most interesting thing is that there was what led to this of finally doing it was this
mhm,
progression into discovering my intention, you know. And so that was something that this Ramadan helped me a lot, you know. And so it was a moment of Alhamdulillah. It was a I would say realization which helped me to finally have the courage to do this, you know, to do this. And also people be wondering like who is this KO guy I have decided to speak to and record. And so basically just to share all the listeners here like why, and they will not, probably not know or have seen your Facebook or have seen your post, even though I've did shared your post quite a few while quite a lot of times. But I think from what I've from what the reason why I decided to speak with you was because of the things that you share resonate a lot with me, you know. And it's something that actually gave me strength and give me understanding, give me perspective, and give me heart to see the world in a way which will give it more meaning. Yeah. So I
mhm,
and then to have this conversation with you is something that I really deeply appreciate, and I hope that the people who do
mhm,
listen to this, you know, they will also appreciate, because what is something that I feel is like we will be beneficial for a lot of people. And so Kyo came from, for everybody who wants to know, he is a graduate from Dallas College. Is that right?
That's
Yeah,
correct.
yeah. And Dallas College is in Cape Town, South Africa, and it's a home and to one of, I would say, the most interesting and influential men of this time, Sheikh Abdul Qadir Sufi or Ian Dallas. And coming from that place, you know, I've met with the people of the community and spoke with them and met different kinds. And like with every other situation around the world, you know, you find roses among thorns and you find thorns among roses. And so in this
Yes.
journey of self-discovery, you will experience such things, you know. And so, and if one is able to push away the unnecessary distractions of this world. And I love like Heidegger said, you know, he said if men like faces his mortality and looks like its mortality straight in the face, the pettiness of life will fade
Yes.
away. You know, it was such an amazing thing to say, and I think I shared that moment with you when I was reading your post. And the reason why I would like to have this conversation with you was because I think it will help a lot of people also, you know, and something that I, as a person who is consistently struggling to find meaning in this world, I think this is
Yes.
having such a conversation from a person who is in South Africa and a person who is here in Asia, in Singapore, and if we can find a meaning which connects us both together,
Mhm,
is something that I believe that everyone around the world can find meaning with, you know. Yeah.
Yes. Uh, First of all, I'd like to say thank you very much for inviting me to your program, and I'd like to say Bismillah to yourself and to the listeners or the viewers, and I'm happy that some of my Facebook posts have resonated with you. I think one of the first things I'd like to say is that when I went to Dallas College by myself, as an African, and I met some of the men in the college, the teachers there, what struck me most was that I remember I had a conversation with my literature um, teacher, Dr. Abdul Basir Ohembarena from Spain. Um, he said something interesting when we were studying a book called the Heart of Darkness, and he said it was a private conversation, but he said one of the things you'll discover is that we are all in the same boat, and he's speaking as a man from Spain, and but more specifically, this is a man who is a Basque, and then there are politics about the Basque people who are also looking for independence. And but also this is a conversation. This is the a theme that we constantly went back to when I talk to people who are different from me. As an African, I spoke to people from Italy, from Russia, from East Europe, from Spain, the UK, Mexico, Indonesia, and then beneath the surface, beneath our skin color, beneath our economic background, there's one thing that's in common, which is we are all on a journey and we are all searching for meaning in life
Yeah.
and how to be how to survive the times that you are fated to. So by extension, I am very happy. I believe that this podcast, this conversation, it's an ongoing conversation I've been having with a lot of people since I was in Dallas College, and then it continues with you, and it's always beneficial to me first and foremost. And I'm very very happy, and I'm very thankful to you
Alhamdulillah wa
for
shukrillah.
inviting me.
Alhamdulillah wa shukrillah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, what was very striking, like, I mean, why I feel this is even has more meaning, in a sense, like, given our current situation, where, for example, like what we have in America, this Black Lives Matters movement, and all those kind of stuff, that is going around the world, and we see the ripple effects that is happening throughout the world. Like, I believe, right, at this very point, like, because the America, basically also because of the media domination, is that we are all Americanized in that sense, and what happens in America has direct impact on us. There's the ripple effect, and it's a very strong ripple effect even in my society, and you see huge people having perspectives and opinions regarding things which do not affect them directly, but it's such an existential reality for them that they have to um, say something. And this is something which I believe that if we do not have the understanding and a perspective that will allow us to be able to tread in these dangerous waters, we might be get swept aside, swept down the sea. I remember one of the conversation I had with Shabda Qadir when I met him one of those years. He told me he said, this world, we are as though we are on a ship. There's a huge ship, and there's a storm that is happening. There's a massive storm that's happening, and for you to make sure you survive, you have to tie yourself around the mast, And when this whole thing stops, when the whole thunderstorm stops, the people who don't tie themselves onto the ship, we get swept aside. And so I mean that I swept out of into the sea. They will drown in the sea and stuff like that. So I realized
Yes.
that what is in common that we will share is that this understanding of this perspective, because we are such a globalized society, and the situations that we are facing is very similar, of course, not on the harsh realities, but on a metaphysical level, we experience the same problems, and how and finding this right means of understanding to be able to tread in this world correctly is such an important thing. And I feel that's a conversation which I want to have with you, like this human being, like like we have heard so many different people speaking about what is this human being, like who what is this thing that we are, this human being where, I mean, we eat, we get angry, we share so many qualities like the animals, but there's something
Yes.
that strikes us so different from the animal. And then this ability, this consciousness, or the ability to rationalize. And if I'm not wrong, we call ourselves the philosophers call ourselves haywan nakliya, which is or the rational animal, like.
Yes.
But given in our time where there is so many different perspectives of what is this rational element. I mean, some crazy people even say we are animals, just merely animals, but
Yes.
who is this rational animal, and how do we and I believe that how we understand what is this rational animal will determine how we live our life, and what kind of life do we live. And so we need to have a good or a right foundation, or I wouldn't say right foundation. I would have come to really like a complete holistic understanding of what is this rational animal for us to be able to, tread our life in the right way. And and this is the conversation I would like to have with you, like what is in your perspective this
Yes.
rational animal.
That's a very interesting question, and a question that the cream of humanity has tried to unpack. Um, and then, of course, what is normally taught at universities, whether you're in South Africa, whether you're in Singapore, whether you're in Australia, whether you're in Argentina, is it's a European. It's our academic life is dominated by the European view. So that is actually the idea that we are rational animals. That is from the Greeks. The Greeks, they're the ones who propose that the human being is a rational animal. Now, it's like philosophy is like mathematics. You start by making a proposition, and then you build on it, to arrive at a conclusion. So one of the things that you find with two of the greatest minds in ancient Greeks, that is Aristotle and Plato, is that they start by proposing a view of the human being. But already they have an answer to solving the problem, which is the state. So there's a deception in it, right? There's a deception in it, in that the philosophy is to justify the state, right? So they said that yes, man is a rational animal. So so what did the Greeks do? They are the ones who introduced democracy. But we need to understand that democracy was on the timeline of human beings. It was quite a short time. It was about 50 years, something like that. It wasn't so long. But the whole point was, since man is a rational animal, he has to be political. He has to be given a political theater to exercise his rationality, right? However, what we find is that at the end, one man dominates a dictator dominates, and a demagogue, the one who is most eloquent, the one who's most able to take to seduce the feelings of people. And I think is Pericles, if I'm not mistaken. If I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong, but he's the one. He's there's one Greek who dominated the entire society at the end. So by the time Plato and Aristotle were alive, they saw this reality. So they needed to redefine. They needed to redefine what is a man, what constitutes a man. So, but their endeavors, their intellectual endeavors, were really for justifying a state. What type of state should be created, right?
I remember.
And then,
Sorry, just to. I remember
yeah,
speaking about this Aristotle and Platonic views, like one of their foundational principles of thinking is something that we call essential thinking, where
yes,
they they actually use they how do I say this? Essential thinking is this mathematical view of life, like is one
yes,
plus one equals to two. Like everything is in this rational argument, this way of thinking. Would you say that something like that?
yes. It's something similar to that. It's like it's like Socrates when he talks to people, right? One of the things that he's good at is that he's already leading you to a conclusion, right? He starts by asking you questions, by making you doubt yourself, but he is leading you without you even knowing. He's already leading you to his conclusion. So that is also Plato does that. Plato does that very well. He starts by asking in the Republic, what is justice, right? There's an inquiry, they talk a lot, but in the end, he's leading the conversation towards a particular end.
A conclusion. A
It's a type
conclusion.
of, yes, a particular conclusion. So for him, the way he saw things, Plato believed that a society has to be ruled by philosopher kings, like an elite of well-trained, well-groomed individuals within the society, and the rest of the society will be basically under their rule. He had a great admiration for Sparta, and Sparta was basically a military city. So he wanted Sparta. He wanted a philosophical version of Sparta.
Interesting.
This is how he starts the conversation. You
Interesting.
understand? So as we jump forward in the timeline, like you go to the Enlightenment period, you have also other philosophers. They were asking the same thing. What is the nature of man? What is man consisted of? What is him? What is man? So you have two main answers to that question. The first answer was given by Rousseau. And Rousseau believed that human beings are inherently good, right? They are inherently pure.
Who is this Rousseau?
And it is only
Who is this Rousseau guy?
Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Yeah, he's a French philosopher. Let me see if I have my notes. Unfortunately, I don't have my notes with
It's
me.
okay.
But he's a French philosopher.
Okay.
He is a French philosopher during the Enlightenment period, and he was one of the philosophers of the time, right? And then to give context to the times, this was the time when Europe was still a medieval society, right? So by medieval, the way the medieval society functioned was that they believed that the princes, the nobility controlled everything. Basically, the nobility and the church controlled everything, and the Catholic Church had their own beliefs about human beings, and then they believe that human beings were born in sin, right? They were born in sin, so they have to be controlled to ensure that. I mean, that's
Yeah,
the
worldview.
conclusion from that type of. Yes, they have to be controlled to make sure that their evil vices do not run amok, right? So Rousseau came with an opposite view. He said that human beings are essentially pure and good, and as a result of that, they have. The, but what causes them to be evil are the restrictions of humanity. Society's restrictions is what makes people to be anxious, and then they lash out and they become evil. So now it sounds like a purely philosophical inquiry, right? But really what he is saying is like Plato, like Socrates, he is leading you to a particular conclusion, which is we have to get rid of the princes and the church, and we have to institute democracy, right? That was the intention all along, right?
Interesting. I mean, this is something that I think like most people don't realize. Like there's so many things that we have so-called an understanding of, but there's the
Yes.
intention behind that answer is something that if you don't discover, you be just a cow. You just be led astray over and over again. And this discovery of the intention of the conclusion is something that is so necessary, for us to discover. And sorry, Siri, carry on.
Yes. So another philosopher that came by is a man named Thomas Hobbes. Same around the same period. And then Thomas Hobbes was an interesting individual because he was born after the English Civil War, right? And so there was a lot of war, an English philosopher. So there was a lot of wars between the king and the parliamentarians, right? And then it was vicious. There's a lot of wars, and when he was born in this era of chaos and destruction and blood and mayhem. So he came with a new view of humanity, of what is man, and he said that really a human being is basically an animal, right? And it is society's norms which keep those animal instincts down, tamed. So therefore, what we have to do is that we need to strengthen those societal norms, and to do that is to create basically a dictatorship, what you call the Leviathan, right? We have to create a dictatorship that controls people, makes sure that people don't kill each other, right? So you already see the intentions here. He started saying something that sounds innocent, but behind that, the conclusion is the same, which is we want to create a dictatorship. I need to have philosophical justifications for dictatorship, right? So I just want to give you one last view of the human being, which was given expression by an English philosopher called John Locke, right? John Locke is normally associated with he's usually called the American philosopher because he gave them a lot of their he gave them a philosophical justification for a lot of the atrocities that they made. So what John Locke said was, this is quite interesting, but it was an extension of Aristotle, because Aristotle, way back during the Greek times, he said that there are people who are natural slaves, right? So hundreds of years later, John Locke repeated he echoed those ideas, right? But the thing that we need to realize was that John Locke owned shares to a slave shipping company, right? So this was during the transatlantic slave trade,
So he was
where
that
slaves were taken from.
he was that he has vested interest in this whole slavery thing, right?
Yes, he already has interest in it,
Mm.
right? So he starts by saying there are some people who are natural slaves and some people who are superior than others,
Mm.
right? And then and by in so doing, he's giving justification for the slave trade. But
Mm.
here's another thing that he's doing. He also came up with an idea of property, right? So he said that it is unjust for anyone to take another man's property, right? Um, Today, if we a lot of the things that are said in America, they usually talk about property, like I have a right to property, right? Because during the medieval times, basically the princess owned the land, and everyone else was basically was a tenant in the land. But John Locke said, no, people have to own property, and it is unjust for a king to take someone else's property.
Mm.
But here's the implication. Here's something that's interesting at the times. It is at the time when America was discovered, right? And his ideas implied that the Native American tribes were not human beings. Therefore, to take their land is not taking a land from human beings. It's like taking land from
Savages, just mere savages.
yes, even beneath that, just animals, just taking land from animals, right? So there's a political aim behind that, right? And then this is what happened. I mean, people don't usually talk about it, but the way the Native American tribes were treated by the U.S. was brutal, was very savage. They were slaughtered, they were starved. Wars were waged against them for hundreds and hundreds of years, a good 500 years. It was very brutal because they believed that these are not real human beings, right? These are animals, and we are not taking their land, right? We are taking basically property, that vacant property. And
Yeah.
then this philosophy, although it's a philosophy, it's an idea that was created for that part of the world, it had direct implications for people around the world. In Australia, the Aboriginals were not seen as human beings. And some people argue that to this day they are not seen as human beings by the Australian government, right? In South Africa, for hundreds of years, the same thing, right? And it had a direct impact into South Africa because in the year 1913, there was a law called the Land Act, where the majority of the land was taken by the white people, the white settlers in this country, right? And then I think the indigenous peoples were given something like 12% of the land space, right? So you're already seeing that a philosopher from England can have such a wide impact on the world. And if you don't know these ideas as a human being, it you could, as you said, you could be like a sheep. You could be following this trend without you even knowing
Yeah.
it.
I
It's like yeah.
I even this whatever you shared about this John Locke perspective, I think I was just recently listening to a podcast by this professor from NUS, Farhana something. I forgot her name, exact name, but she was basically speaking about um, how the colonizers were actually how they colonized this area where we had, which is called Nusantara. Nusantara is this area in Southeast Asia, which is consists of Indonesia, some parts of Philippines, Singapore, and Malaysia. This whole area is called Nusantara. And so she was discussing how the Dutch and the English were actually they actually looked at the people who they colonized as though they were subhumans, that they were lesser human beings than the white people. These colonizers, when they were dealing with the people, the natives here, like the Malays, the different cultures, Malays, even the Chinese, they treated this group of people to be lesser human beings. And so to travel in between Dutch and English colonies, you had to seek permission from the English. And if you were from the Dutch land, if you wanted to go to um, the British area, you have to seek permission from the Dutch colonizers, and the Dutch colonizers will the Dutch people, they will say that, okay, you want to go to the British land, I must check whether you are fitting to be traveling. So they treated everybody as though they were like subhumans, and I think this was the agenda, this imperialist agenda, which has swept across the entire world. And so this idea is, I was just recently listening to this, recently, where there are so many people in the world who are struggling for justice, but they end up being the dictator. So there's this
Yes.
have you heard this thing before, where they were struggling so much to make sure they got justice, but at the end of, right, when they finally, justice was within their reach, they resort to dictatorship. And so I think this is also something that
Yes.
we face locally as well. No, this idea of this philosophical idea have not left the people. This idea of what John Locke was
Yes.
proposing has not left the people, but the people, if the people do not understand these concepts, understand
Hmm.
that these concepts are so essential for them to discover and to see where they are, where they are in the world, then they will forever be stuck. And then when they rediscover there is such ideas in the world, I think the most important question that we have to ask next is, what is the best way, or what is the true way of looking, what is this human being, and what is that?
Yes, that's an interesting. Before I answer your question, I have to say that, for us as people, um, one philosopher who is very, very, very important to us is a man named Martin Heidegger. There's a 20th century philosopher,
Mm.
and one of the most striking things he said was that philosophy is dead, right? Philosophy is dead. In other words, this pursuit of creating all these ideas in our minds, and then trying to give them a political, uh, social and political, concrete reality. It's dead. Instead of us, instead of what he argued was, instead of us creating all these concepts in our mind, we have to live in the world and look in the world and learn from the world, instead of us taking our ideas and projecting them into the world. We have to learn from the world,
Mm.
right? We have to be learners, not, I'm repeating the same question, but we have to learn from the world. And this is the existentialist idea. So one of the things that he talked about was that when you are born, you are thrown in the world like a sword, right? You are thrown in the world. And when you are thrown in the world, you are you're gonna be exposed to different ideas, the ideas of the world. Every society, it doesn't matter which time you are thrown in the world, whether you are born today, whether you are born 50 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago. When you are thrown in the world, you're gonna get exposed to a lot of ideas, right? So how do you navigate that, right? That's one of the things that he's going to inquire into. But for us as Muslims, right? For us as Muslims, the way we understand the human being is that the human being is, at first, the Arabs understood the human being as a speaking animal. It's an animal that speaks, an animal that can talk, an animal that has articulation.
Mm.
And I don't know clearly what that means, right? I don't know what that means yet. I haven't yet read up on it. But also what we know from experience, from our own experience, if just by looking at my life as an individual, I know that within me there are good things, and within me there are evil elements within my own being, right? So it's an admixture of both. I am not a purely good human being, as Rousseau argued, and I am not a purely uh, savage, as uh, Thomas Hobbes said, and as by
Lock.
extension John Locke said, right? I'm a human being, and I have an admixture of both. By the
Mm.
fact that I can talk,
Mm.
by the fact that I can articulate myself, proves John Locke wrong,
Mm.
right? That there are some people who are savages, other people who are better than others.
Mm.
By the fact that I can talk, that is enough. Because there was a point when, you know, Europe was saying that human beings have to build, monuments, and they have to create civilizations to be
Mm.
considered as human beings,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
And then that is not an Islamic approach. And it actually had an impact on Africans, because a lot of Africans they fell into the trap, right? They fell into the trap of that. And then there was a movement which was created, which was an Afrocentric movement, which they argued very strongly and with good reason that, black Africans built Egypt, the pyramids, and so forth,
Mm.
right? When they were arguing that, what they were really saying, what they were doing was that
The
they were,
opposite. The opposite.
yes, the opposite of that, right?
Yeah.
And they were falling for the game. They were still
Mm.
within the rules that the
Mm.
Europeans had
Mm.
created, right?
Mm. Mm.
So that's what they wanted. So
Mm.
if, like me, I'm from the very, very, very south of Africa.
Mm.
I have no direct link to ancient Egypt, but there are some links. There are some links, but very hard to trace back to Egypt. Um, very far removed, I mean. So my maybe 7 generations ago, my ancestors, they were human beings. They were walking around. They were wearing skins. They were not interested in building walled cities. They were just interested in farming and simple life. That was their life.
Mm.
Does it mean they were not human beings? Yes or no?
Mm.
And then according to the Islamic understanding, is that they were human beings. Could they talk?
Mm.
Yes, they could talk. In fact, we could argue that people in the past were better human beings than us today, just by judging on language, the way we
Mm.
use language.
Mm.
Right? Right? Even indigenous, whether our grandparents,
Mm.
they articulated themselves far better than we are,
Mm.
right? So the human being, according to Islam, is a talking animal. Is a
I understand, but I have something to maybe propose to you that you might be
Yes.
quite interested to consider. You know, like
Hmm.
the one thing is the human being is this person who is able to talk for sure, but also this human being, and the word in Arabic, the one of the word the words in Arabic in the Quran is called ayats, right? And ayats is also a meaning of
Yes.
sign. It's a sign.
Yeah.
Ayats is also means a sign. And when the Prophet ﷺ was squeezed, so he was asked to read Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq, to read in the name of your Lord, but he said I couldn't read, I couldn't read the sign, because he said he was illiterate, in that sense. But after the third squeeze, some of the scholars, they proposed this idea. They said he realized that the squeeze was it was not asking him to read the signs of a book or to read scripts, but he was supposed to read
Hmm.
the signs in the world, and like every single thing in this world is a sign. It's a indication from signs. It's like, it's a reflection of a sign of God in that sense. So
Yes.
our the ability that we can speak, our ability to speak as a human being, and the fact that people before could speak very well was that they understood the and then words were also something that people will have direct connection with their hearts. Like words are windows to their reality. Like what I determine as success, like for example, give you an example, like if I believe success is a big house,
Yes.
a big
Hmm.
a big car, a big this, a big that, wealth, and a big tons of money in the bank, then my version of success and my happiness depends on whether I arrive at that or not. So how I understand, how I define words is directly affects the way I live my life, or my state of my heart, right? And I guess those people back then, they were directly connected to the true meaning of words. In our time where words have become, like Heidegger said, public buses, a means to get to an end, and where we are in a situation in our world where words have no meaning, and then we just articulate words without having every real consciousness of what it means. And the people before, I realized that that even though the words that they said, or the words that the way that they speak, and how they understood life, and to get to the core meaning or the principle of life, was much more powerful than us. Was much more is much more powerful than us. They got to the
Yes.
core much easily. And I believe that, like, a lot of why, there's so much depression, so much the Prozac society, what we're having now, the Prozac society, and this the pessimism, victim philosophy that is inherent in this world, is a result of this failure to realize who is this human being. And
Yes.
yeah, yeah. What do
So
you think?
I like to. I think that is very much correct, because here's a, here's a question. If we accept that that Islamic view that the human being is a talking animal, the next question we need to ask ourselves is, what is the highest form of speech
Mm,
that a human being can articulate,
amazing.
right? And from the Islamic view, that is to praise Allah.
Allah.
There's no higher speech than that,
Mm,
right? So, as I said, um, it's like mathematics, right? You start your argument, or it's like logic, rather, better. You start your argument, then you build on it, right? So, from an Islamic perspective, if if um if we go to the conclusion of the way Muslims understand the human being, we would say that you have to praise Allah. You have to do dhikr of Allah, right? So that's very important. And also, to build on your argument, because of because we have lost the meaning, the true meaning of words. We no longer understand what the word love means,
mm,
the meaning of it.
yeah.
We no longer understand what that means.
Mm,
We no longer understand, for example, the word God
mm,
means.
sure.
I mean, the word has been so bastardized that I don't use that word in when I write. I
Mm,
prefer the divine or providence or something like that, because that word has been, destroyed. And that indicates a lot.
yeah.
That indicates a lot about the society, this globalized society that we are living in,
Mm,
right? So sometimes, when I want to convey certain concepts to people, I would stay away sometimes from English words, right? I could either use, if I'm speaking to an English someone who speaks English, I would either use Latin or Greek, just to convey something. So freedom, the word freedom, we don't understand that. So I would prefer to use liberty. Even the word manhood, to be a man. I would prefer maybe a Latin word like uh, to be a vir, which is the man. So from that word comes virile and so forth. So I think that our language has definitely collapsed.
Yeah.
Has lost its meaning. The English language, that is, has lost its meaning, and that indicates a lot about our the society that we are in. This globalized society. It indicates a lot of things.
Yeah. So I mean, this whole thing about how we are currently at, you know, then what is this human being? Like, given that situation that, we have all these different philosophers, all of these different guys saying so many
Yeah.
different things, and when you piece it down together, when you break it down and when you just analyze it, you say these guys had alternative motives. They were not so
Yes.
nice. They weren't
Yes.
nice guys with good intentions. And so you realize that
Yes.
these people, like, you have to really look at them. You have to really scrutinize who is saying those words. We can't just say John Locke said this. Like, why do it? So I mean, so was he a philosopher? Yeah, you just can listen to him, but we really need to discover, like, what did John Locke do in John Locke's time? Was he a farmer on just a farmer, and he did not have any, like, wealth? He was not politically interested, or had no he had no interest in, like, huge situations or businesses like that, or was he a simple man? And that determines
Yes.
what comes out of him. Determines the credibility of what he says. And something is very interesting, like Ernst Jünger. Even he was such a, I would say, like a war hero, and when he came back, he just was secluded in a quiet place in the countryside. And from there he was giving out all of these interesting views of life and stuff like that. And so I and because of that, we it's so important for us in this 21st century, where we are influenced from every angle. We are influenced when we turn right. There is some marketing words, slogans on there. There is an intention behind that. The intention
Yes.
behind it is to lead you somewhere. And then you look to the left, you look down, look up, you watch your Facebook, we watch our Instagrams, we watch the papers, we read the papers. Everything has a agenda behind it. And we as Muslims, and this is my own self-discovery, I've seen people, when you mentioned zikr of Allah just now, like the remembrance of Allah. I've been with people who remember Allah, who think they remember Allah. They will sing, and they will go into this trance-like state, go into this state. But they have no clue, and they don't find no interest in discovering how they think. You get what I'm trying to say? It's like they are purely a product of society. If you were to look at their life and what they do, the things that they say, the characteristics that they follow, they are a direct product of a good citizen. You are a complete, beautiful, good citizen. You are. And I'm not saying that a good Muslim is a bad citizen. I'm not saying that. You can be a good citizen. But I'm trying to say is, but
Yes.
if you think that you are a product, and you are so comfortable in that bubble that you live in, and you don't question anything, I'm just happy living my life, and I'm just making zikir all day, all night, and then I'm thinking I am arriving somewhere, and they believe they are arriving somewhere, and I realized that was such a fantasy. And then this is another problem, because people think they are doing zikr of Allah, but they're not. They are still caught in this fantasy world. And then I realized that the true men, the true people, men and women who remember Allah, they are not like common people. They cannot be. And if you see,
Mm.
if we see the stories of the prophets, for example, when we read the Quran, and this is how I've realized it, it's like we look at the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam, example, just
Yes.
a version of a human being, Ibrahim alayhi salam. And when he was
Hmm.
told, and he was tested by God, by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to put his baby and his wife in the valley.
Hmm.
I mean, on a personal level, right now, existential level, I can never imagine me doing that. Honestly, I can never imagine myself taking my wife and kids into a valley and saying, "Guys, stay there. You'll find some water."
Yes. Yes.
I will never imagine that. But
Yeah, that's true. I think, one of the things that you've said, I mean, you said a lot of great things. You talked about that we are influenced by everywhere, right? Left, right, up, down. You are surrounded by these different ideas. And I think that, the Prophet Ibrahim, alayhi salam, one of the most extraordinary things about him was that he was also, I mean, he was a human being like you and me, and he was born in a society. And he was told whatever society told him to worship the idols, right? So the idols for me is not only it's not only like a physical
figures.
thing,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. Not just that.
Like, not only like those physical things. It could be wealth, the pursuit of wealth, whatever society tells you should do, right?
Mm,
And it doesn't matter whether the society is Islamic or not. You are born
mm,
in a society, is a society. It has good and bad.
mm,
What's extraordinary for me was that he he broke the idols, right? And then he left, and he looked for the truth, right? And his journey is very important because he's looking for the truth, right? So he says that the stars, are for him, worthy of worship. And then the moon came up, and then he said, "Well, I don't worship this. I'm gonna worship the moon because it's better than the stars."
mm,
And then it became dawn.
mm.
The sun came up, and then he said, "Well, it looks like there's something is not correct with me." So and then once he managed to, and that part is the la ilaha, right? That's the la ilaha, because he's starting by destroying all these idols from
Mm.
his home village in the desert. That is the la ilaha. There's none worthy of worship.
He is
And then he says,
his discovery of himself. This asking yourself this inward question was his pursuit of eradicating the idols of his time, the idols within himself. We should
yes,
say that, right? And this is so
yes,
important.
definitely,
It's so important that we have to find within ourselves this that the human being is this animal, or whatever you want to call it,
yeah,
is this being which is goes inside of himself and eradicates everything that is not God. Eradicates everything to that like quality which
yes,
Ibrahim Salam
definitely.
have. Yeah. Correct. Continue, Sidi.
That's absolutely correct. So he's starting with the la ilaha. He's destroying all these idols. He said these are not worthy of worship, right? And then he continues the shahada, says illallah, right? Except Allah. Allah is the one who created them. I'm gonna worship the one who created everything. So the truth came from him, right? It came from him, because you can be told, you can grow up in a Muslim home, and you can be told that worship Allah, be a good Muslim, do this and do that. But if it's not in you, if you haven't done that work
Mm.
of trying to discover that shahada,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a reason why we say the shahada every day,
Yep.
in the iqama.
Mm.
So there's a constant search for that. It has to come from within. Your parents can't force that knowledge into you.
Yeah.
You yourself, as an individual, have to discover it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter whether you're in Tariqa, you're in Turuk or not, Muslim or not. This is something you have to do. It has to come from within you,
Yeah.
and that is the challenge that we are facing.
Yeah.
And this is the challenge our fathers were facing.
Yeah.
And this is the challenge that our sons will be facing, and
Yeah.
so forth.
For sure. For sure. Yeah, and then and is this human being, like, we started the conversation wondering what is this human being. Even though I personally right now, even though that we are what we have done is basically saying what is not, all we could really do actually, in how I've discovered this whole situation is that what we have been doing all our life is saying is this eradication of what is not. We are saying that the human being is not a fully loving animal, is not a fully hate evil animal, is not all of this,
Hmm.
right?
That is correct. And I remember, they say that the scholars say that as you move forward as a human being, and the Muslim scholars, they say as you move forward as a human being, in front of you there is hellfire, and then there's paradise. Right in front of you, you are making those movements, and you're going towards your end. So that's also very important. And you know, within the society that you are living in, within these different ideas that you are given, at the end of the day, we as a human being, within your heart resides such a strong and a rich fountain of knowledge. If only we can go within ourselves. But because of the media and even our circles, our close immediate circles, we are always told. Oftentimes, we are told to go away from ourselves. So success is outside of yourself, right? Success is not in you; it's outside.
Yeah.
A job, house,
Yeah.
this or that. Even if it's not that, if you are living in another society, success is being a warrior,
Yeah.
soldier,
Yeah.
a trader,
Yeah.
whatever it is, but
Whatever
it's
it is.
outside of you,
Yep.
right? But the way of Sayyidina Ibrahim is to go inside of you, right? That is the way.
Yeah.
It's almost the opposite. It's not to get all those things outside.
Yeah.
It's almost to destroy them,
Yeah. And
right?
this,
That's the opposite.
yeah.
You destroy everything
Yeah.
outside. Yeah.
And this is something that I believe is that is not shared enough. Is like when people, like, when this, maybe this is part of my thrownness, it is part of my self prejudice, but I believe that this kind of things are not shared enough. That when people speak about what is this Muslim identity, or what does it mean to be Muslim, the only thing that comes out is an Arabic garb. It comes out with a hat. You have to speak Arabic. You read these things, but actually no. What we are saying. I mean, the core of this. The core of how this whole thing makes sense is this pursuit for self-discovery, and you will never be happy. You will never find satisfaction if you are not pursuing this self-discovery, for your own self. I remember Sheikh Abdul Qadir Al-Sufi was saying, he was saying something about this. He said that the human being, the purpose of it, the sign, the to fulfill fulfill the purpose of the human being is to worship Allah. And this
Yes.
fulfillment of this worship of Allah is not this idea that we have of just praying 5 times a day, or just singing songs, or just that. It's not that. It's not just that. It's more than that. It's your entire being. Is every moment. Is your pursuit for discovery. Is your journey on continuously worshipping Him. Every action is based on Him, and that is a beautiful person in every single age. You don't have to be and what we have today, this manifestation of this dark manifestation of this evil manifestation of terrorism, is just a product of these same people, like what you mentioned, the Africans who wanted to fit into the logic of the previous people. They were caught in the
Yeah.
trap. That is a product of terrorism. That is the product. They want to fit in
Yes.
into the whole dialectic of this time. But the person who searched for freedom, he's beyond that. He's not caught up in dialectic. He's not caught up in rhetorics of the age. He is free for his time being, and this is the identity of the true Muslim. And in how I understand it, is this in the person who goes into himself and goes into himself and looks at the world and sees everything that is not worthy to worship, and then he realized out of his bewilderment of that this whole world is cannot be worshipped. Then who do I worship? And then you realize that the one who created this world of bewilderment, and you just blow your mind, and it's like that is the true shahada, that you witness that godliness, you witness that God, that Allah that you're seeing, and that is true worship of Allah. And that is the same thing like a cat. The cat is incomplete if it does not have its morning purr. The dog is incomplete if it does not bark. The human being is incomplete if it does not worship Allah. It does not worship his creator. And that this is the human being, and this pursuit to discover this human being is, I feel, is a job of every single person. It's a duty. It's a duty for every person, every single human being that is in this world, and not otherwise. So I think these whole conversations that we've been having, like for this past an hour, was really just an inquiry into what this is still just an inquiry, because I realize, we realize that this is almost impossible, or will always be impossible to us to come to be able to point a finger to it, but what we can be able to achieve is to be able to brush right color strokes to indicate us the way forward, to indicate for us the way by which we can really make sense of this world. And then we were discussing about Ibrahim alayhi salam. We were discussing about the previous people, and we also know that there were different groups of people who Allah didn't mention in the Quran about the previous prophet, other prophets that there were around the different regions. And what we realize is that there is like somewhat a similarity that we share, this that the people has this desire for self-discovery, and I think this is something which every human being desires. Everyone desires this pursuit for self-discovery, but we sometimes, because of the confusion, maybe sometimes because it's too taxing, there's so many terminologies, there's this, there's that, and because we get confused in all of these concepts that we or the throwenness of our time, we just sit back and say like, I it's too much. What do you what do you think we
Yes.
should do, in the kind of situation?
Well, then this is, as I said before, this is the Romans say that nothing is new under the sun, and the same problems we are facing have been faced before, right? And some people, as you said, because it's so taxing, it's so difficult, some people have resorted to drugs to sort of calm that anxiety, that yearning, right? That yearning for more. So to calm them down, they have to take Prozac, they have to take alcohol. So there are other drugs that we do take as human beings when we have stopped inquiring into these, questions. We take, for example, an addiction to football, sports. We can be addicted to pornography. We can be addicted to work. But these are cheap substitutes for what we really, really want,
Subhanallah.
right? And I think there's something that Sheikh Abu Qadr Sufi wrote, which points to what we can get. Right. So I would like to, read it for you. Maybe it will be of benefit.
Bismillah.
Okay, let me see. Okay, let's see. Okay, so Sheikh Abdul Qadir Asufi says, the science of knowledge, which is grounded not on thoughts but on vision, has always been available to the human race through the transmitted teachings of the messengers. This science we discover from the beginning of man's recorded history. The one science that has come down to us, the transmitted science of direct inner perception, devoid of sensory veiling, is to be found in the original teachings of the Tao. It is to be found in the uniquely encoded messages of the Chan masters, extracting the teachings in their purity from a source over 2,000 years before them. It is in the whole record of the Gnostics of Islam, from the companions who lived 1400 years ago, the people of the Sufa, to the great Sufi teachers, Imam al-Junaid, Mawlay Abdul Qadir al-Jilani, Naqshbandi, Shadili, and Darqawi. From the beginning, alongside this teaching, can be traced a record of its suppression, sometimes by political tyrants who believe in nothing, and often from people who wish to keep this knowledge dead so that they could rule by concepts and ritual and what we now call, quote-unquote, religion. But this teaching is not religion. It is pre-religious. It is the way of the Hanif, the ancient way of Ibrahim. It precedes structured religious system. It is pre-priesthood, pre-scholarship. And when it emerges, it can be seen for what it is, a brute wisdom, a naked enlightenment, the shock encounter with how it is. Its outer framework is free acceptance of moral prerogatives, the agreement in contract with existence to live within a moral boundary as the body itself is bounded. It accepts outer form, for the form itself is the secret of the real. Quote, wherever you turn, there is the face of Allah, end quote. So I think that passage from Sheikh Abdul Qadir, it's an indication, right? And I think it goes as the title of the book is called. It's an indication from science. He's pointing to something else, and he's not saying.
He's not rationalizing it for you,
Give it,
right? Do you mean like something which these
yes,
philosophers do? They ask you these questions to push you somewhere, and they already know the conclusion, but the conclusion which he's indicating to us is this self-discovery, which only you can taste this. What he experienced is something else from what we're gonna experience it, right? Would you agree to that? Something like that.
exactly. I agree to that. He's not telling you, you have to take the journey. You have to take the journey, and it's what he's doing. I think in this passage, he's doing the La ilaha, right? He's doing the La ilaha. He's saying to you that, you have to do the rest. It's not here. And then, but the vision that he talks about, I mean, I can't show you what I see, right? Even if I'm a great painter, I'm limited, right? I can't show you what I see at any moment in my life. So it's an experience I have, right? Just like you can show me what you see. You can sort of describe it to me. You can describe, Singapore is a great city, and then you can start using language like it's like such and such and such. It is similar to such and such and such. But I have to go and see it for me. Yeah, I have to see it. I have to see it myself. So Sheikh Abdul Qadir is saying this knowledge is there, right? It exists. There's a history of it. being written down, from the Taoist masters, and then through the Sufis, it's been written down.
Through the
So it
Sahabas, yeah.
exists. That
Yeah.
just proves proves that it exists. But you have to take it on. You have to go and look for it. And the most interesting thing about a murid, the word murid, a murid is someone who is who's in the path, for this knowledge. It comes from the word irada, which means will. So the murid is someone who wills to know this. You have to want to know it, but you have to take the steps. No one can do it for you. I think that's a message that we have to echo to everyone that we meet. We have to say, all these addictions are just a poor substitute. I know you want more. I know you want more. This is it's not the answer. This is just a poor substitute.
Yeah.
Let's take each other as brothers, and let's try to figure it out.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah.
I think that's what we can.
Yeah, and that's what is so interesting about it, is that when we look into the world, when we look to our close friends, families, and people who we are close, who's dear to us, we realize that some of them are also searching, and in their pursuit for self-discovery, they face their own demons, they face their own difficulty, and this internal struggle which they are going through, and what is
Yes.
striking for me, and what I've come to love about people, is the people who choose courage, who is courageous enough to face themselves in the mirror and face what is internally contradictory in themselves, to find the answer which will quench their thirst. And I think this is something that we all should have, this courage within ourselves to want this knowledge, and sometimes these people seems to go against it, for me, for example, I give you an example. Like, one of the journeys I took, one of the things that I experienced was, I think you did share this with me also one time, where we look at the people who appear to be, for example, we call this them the Salafis or the Wahhabis, right? They will say things to about this certain group of people. This certain group of people, if they did not look at it in the right frame of mind, they will just need to see that they need to defend themselves. But what if
Yes.
if these guys were right? Like, what if they were right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
What if they're right? What you gonna do about it? And that is, and you cannot just deny people's statements because of your internal biasness. You have to fight it. You have to weigh whatever they say on one hand, give it equal strength, give it equal credibility as what you believe, and you put whatever you believe on this another side, and then you
Yes.
compare it. And for me, and then you battle it out. You challenge yourself, and that is true struggle. There is true struggle within yourself. And I think, and this is a reality that every human being face, without religion names, without you are saying you're a Muslim or a Christian or whatever you are. A human being is this person with this consciousness, and he should be able to find his meaning like that. And if he is sincere in his searching for it, if he is sincere in his pursuit for this true meaning of what it means to be a human being, then life will open doors that he never knew existed. But the only condition was that he has to be true to his will. You get what I'm trying to say?
Yes, I understand. I think you talk about courage, and then interestingly, the word courage, I think it comes from French, Old French, if I'm not mistaken, and it means, I know that it means the heart. I think it comes from the word kur, if I'm not mistaken, but it means heart. So again, it comes from within, and it goes outside, right? And no one can force you to be courageous. It has to come from inside. yes, people can help you, can educate you to be courageous, encourage you, but it has to come from within you, because there are people who say they're courageous, but once the forces of life come, they collapse.
They collapse. Yeah.
So another thing is that yes, we are contradictory within ourselves. You have all the demons and angels, are battling within our own hearts. All these forces within our own hearts. So so we are fighting against ourselves. Really, ultimately, this is what's happening. So when someone else, whoever it is, shows you your demons and highlights that part of you where you are wrong, sometimes can be frightening to see yourself. So you go into like a type of tribalism, and you say, "Oh no, you're just a Wahhabi. I don't want to listen to you. You're an atheist. I don't want to listen to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're a Christian. I don't want to listen to you." But you're correct. What if they are right? What if you're doing something wrong? He's showing you that part of you that you don't like, right? And how should you react to that? And the best way is to be like, as you say, to be courageous, to go and to look at the demon and say, it does exist. I'm not as good as I thought I am. How do I deal with this demon, right? There's a myth. One of the things that I was always interested in is the knights. When I was growing, used to watch these cartoons about dragons and knights. The knight has to go and slay the dragon, and you ask yourself that, the dragon will have in his cave, he'll have treasure, and you ask yourself, what does a dragon need treasure for? Is he gonna go shopping? He's not gonna go shopping with that money, or sometimes the dragon has a princess, the princess, right? And he never eats the princess, which is very strange. They don't eat, they don't devour, they're just there.
But you eat the
The
knight.
dragon, they just have the princess.
He will eat the
Yeah,
knight, but he won't eat the
yeah, but he
princess.
get the knight. Yeah, but he'll eat the knight. So the knight has to come riding. He can be, killed. And he's facing that dragon,
Yeah.
right? He has to face the dragon. So as the dragon, for me, it represents the dragon within ourselves. And that dragon can kill you, because some people actually go insane when they see parts of themselves that they don't like. They can be consumed by their dark part, the dark parts of their selves. But if you're courageous and you have the skill, you can defeat the dragon within you. What the Prophet, peace be upon him, called the greater jihad. You can kill the dragon within you, and you get the wealth. The treasure and the beautiful princess just represents great wealth, knowledge. As far as I'm concerned, you can know yourself. But that is courageous. I mean, what would you do if a dragon comes in your village? Would you be the ones who says, I'm gonna take the sword, take my horse, and risk it all, or would you stay in the pub? It's a question.
It's brilliant. I mean, I think it's beautiful to end it in that question. Like, who will you be? And that is just a direct reflection of who you are at this current moment. I remember I think
Yes.
like the question, like, if we put ourselves in Nazi Germany, and one of the citizens of Nazi Germany, if you imagine that we are one of that person, and knowing that the Germans were like killing the Jews, what kind of German will you be? Will you be the German who hides the Jews in your cabinet, or are you gonna rob them, or are you gonna sell them out? What kind of Germans will you be? Because the status quo was that it's honorable and it's legal and it was the right thing to do to exterminate them, to be unjust to them. But this right now, this person who you are, imagine if you are in Nazi Germany, what kind of person you be. And it's a scary thought. It's a scary thought. The fact that you do not know the answer is scary as is so scary.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
it's so scary. You know, and
it is.
yeah, yeah.
It is scary. I mean, there's someone who said that there's an interview of someone who said that he didn't like Hitler, right? But he went to one of his speeches, and then when he left when he left, thereafter he said he felt like he could give Hitler everything that he wanted. He was willing to die for Hitler, you know, and that's one speech. So it is it is easy, definitely, it is easy for us to say that they were monsters. It's very easy. I can say it. But you know, if your life is if you're complying to the script of today, you know, of today, you are going to work, paying your taxes, you know, and then you're doing everything that you've been told. What makes you think that you wouldn't be doing the same during the Nazi times?
Yeah.
Are you questioning today?
Mm,
Even if you are questioning today's morals, what are you doing about it?
mm,
You know, so you know, what are you doing?
yeah.
Yeah, you have your credit card debts. You're just going with the program.
Yeah.
So we are not safe.
Yeah.
We are not safe. We are
Yeah.
not safe. And then yeah, this we should consider that.
Yeah. And I think this is the journey of the human being. Would you say, like, to discuss? I mean, we cannot put. It's impossible for us to attempt to define this vast experience of us. You know, I'm like 30 years old, and even being at 30, I've experienced so many things, and I feel like it's
Mhm.
so much. But when you look at the human being and his history, this thousands and thousands of human history, and this experience of every single person is so different, and I think it would be an impossible thing to define the human being as just a single word, you know, a single sentence to say like what is this all about. But I think it's such an abstract thought that that to understand it means that you have to discover it. You know, it's not pieces of, it's not formulation of nice sentences, just nice sentences, but it is you being part of the process of self discovery that will allow you to gain that realization. You know? That's what I have come to consider.
I'm definitely in agreement with you. I am definitely in agreement with you because you know, at the end of the day, what I wish for is when I die to have no regrets. You know, there's an interesting thought experiment that Nietzsche made, and he said, imagine you met a demon, right, in the middle of the forest, and he said to you, you will live your life exactly as you have lived it thus far, again and again and again for eternity. Would you be happy about it, or would you curse the demon? Right. So that is the question that Nietzsche says. So what type of life do you want to live? Right. And interestingly, if you look at like a lot of the Hollywood celebrities and so forth, you know, they regret this. You know, they regret it. They regret it all. You know. So I want to live a life that at the end of the day, I could look at the demon and say, yes, I would like to live that life again and again and again and again. I have no problem with that.
Yeah,
So that is the goal.
that is the goal, and that is the journey
Yeah.
to be that kind of person. Thank you so much, Kyo. I really appreciate this conversation that you have all over South Africa, worlds apart, you know, time zone being so different. It's night time now, you know. So
Yes.
I really appreciate this conversation, and then the most interesting part is that hearts are connected beyond space and time, and this is another proof of that. That
Yes.
the human being is such a
Yes.
vast creature that it can connect with people from everywhere in the world and find similarities and find commonalities that we can appreciate each other by. And I think that is such a powerful thing, and that's such a powerful thing that we can share with people, and then to appreciate how are we connected rather than how are we separated. And I thank you so much
Yes.
for this talk. And and we have so much to talk about some more. That's, I mean, we cannot, and we need to have you again on this session, and to discuss more of these issues. And I hope the people that who listens to us will appreciate this. And appreciate what, I mean, even if they don't appreciate it, is irrelevant, because out of the thousands, or maybe a few hundreds, or maybe 10, or maybe 5, or maybe just one, and if this makes a difference in their hearts, and it makes them um, um, share this common state of liberation, I think it's a victory. It's a victory itself.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
Yes, I'd like to thank you very much, Mubarak, for inviting me to this program for us to have a conversation. And thank you to everyone who is watching and listening. And I think that whatever benefit, if everything that we've said you disagree with, the only thing that I would like the listener to take is that they have to take a journey towards self-discovery. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sidi. Inshallah, I'll hope to have you again on board. Until next time, Assalamualaikum, Habibi. Take care.
Walaikum salam.
Perfect, Sidi. Alhamdulillah.